A huge portion of our economic activity now passes through credit card companies, wire transfers, clearing houses, and other middlemen. And some of them fit together well, and some of them don't. But the systems these companies created were necessary in their time, even great accomplishments. And we still use them because they're the best way that we can connect our assets to this big thing we call the internet. But imagine, having gone through all those examples of some problems our system has, if our ledgers, if our assets and debts were connected more directly to the internet. If we could instantaneously send money digitally to one another from any point we now access the internet to any point we now access the internet. It could help donations flow freely to disaster zones. It could prevent currency manipulations by corrupt governments. It could have all kinds of effects, including maybe even making it easier to buy a Coke with your phone. Now, the problem with this idea, of course, is that those ledgers, as soon as they were put on the internet, would be instantly destroyed by a legion of hackers. Imagine DDoS attacks, phishing, spyware, all targeted directly at your precious bank account. Within days, if not weeks, the entire money supply of the world would be divided between China, Russia, and Nigeria. This is because the internet, for all the same reasons that it was able to spread very quickly around the world, is actually not a terribly secure technology and certainly not a very reliable one. We've all experienced, Netflix stutters a bit while you're watching a video. That's annoying, but that little stutter in the middle of a bank transfer is potentially catastrophic. Now, this is where the blockchain comes in. A little bit less than 10 years ago, someone, and we still really don't know who, figured out how to make data secure on the internet. The technical details of how a blockchain works are arcane, to say the least, so I'm going to do my best to get it over with really quickly. Blockchains, including the one that runs the cryptocurrency Bitcoin, use currency, digital currency, to incentivize hosts around the world to keep copies of a single ledger, tracking debits and assets in any given currency. These nodes connect to one another to constantly check what's on that ledger and make sure that everybody has matching copies. If, for example, one node or even many nodes were corrupted, then the rest of the network would kick them off. This is how we are able to have a large network that connects people from one point to another to a single ledger that's trustworthy. The end users, the people who hold accounts on these ledgers, use private keys to access their entries and therefore can send money anywhere in the world using that technology. Now, I'm leaving out a million things, including some core technology, some core security features. But we'll just take an example that's in the world to kind of get the point across. The Bitcoin network holds more than $3.3 billion in financial assets. It has been around for about 6 years, and even though it's connected to the Wild West of the internet, even though individuals' private keys have been stolen or lost in various ways, the fundamental underlying architecture that protects that $3.3 billion in assets has never been breached. It's as safe as any bank ledger, and it's safer than most credit card networks, as any customer of Target or Ashley Madison can tell you. Now, this fundamental innovation is why institutions like UBS, Barclays, Goldman Sachs, and Citibank have all hired blockchain engineers to explore projects for them. It's why why venture capitalists like Andreessen Horowitz and Lightspeed Ventures have put tens of millions of dollars into startups like Circle and Ripple Labs, which have raised $50 million and $30 million respectively. Those investments aren't just premised on the idea that people are going to buy Cokes with Bitcoin or send money home to India. This is a fundamental new piece of our financial infrastructure. Ripple is focused on building, using blockchain, an alternative to the ACH system that banks currently use to transfer funds from one to another. A study by Banco Santander last year concluded that banks worldwide could save up to $20 billion each year if they used a blockchain instead of ACH to conduct their internal transfers. Other startups are working to connect non-cash assets to blockchains. Things like stocks, futures, houses, cars. And because we have total security on the blockchain, this new form of titling system could replace the paper and personnel-heavy system that we have now. At the other end of the scale, blockchain payment systems allow things to work on a very fine scale and very small payments. Because blockchain currencies are not just cheap to send. Oh, and I glossed over that part. So transactions sent over this network cost about 0.1%, which compared to Visa, which charges you 3%, it's a pretty huge difference. But these transactions aren't just cheap to send. You can send them at any size and very fast. Now, this is important for what we're calling the Internet of Things, this developing ecosystem of objects that live in the real world around us and that we interact with to get in touch with the internet in various ways. A really, really, I don't want to say primitive, but preliminary version of the Internet of Things you might actually have seen if you were parking in downtown St. Pete. There's a system called Park Mobile. It's a phone app that sort of kind of connects into the parking system here. And when you look at that screen, it tells you right up front that you're paying for your parking, but you're also paying an extra 35 cents or so because you forgot your quarters. Now that 35 cents doesn't go to the people who run the Park Mobile app. Almost all of it goes to payment processors, credit card companies. And I'm just guessing here, but I would guess that if St. Pete used a blockchain currency-based parking payment system, we collectively would save, maybe 10 grand a year, something like that.